Okay, now we move to the next step, which is now data analysis. Remember the concept that as you collect qualitative. Okay, so what are the steps that you really need to undertake? The steps that you need to undertake during data analysis and interpretation is that in most cases you will have data in the form of audio, okay, and you will need uh, to have scripts of that data. So you conduct what we call transcription. So transcription is making that data in a form of text from the audio. Um, so you can do this, of course, manually, but of course these days there are a lot of applications that can actually help you in transcription using computer programs or even applications. So that's something that you can look at how you can transfer this information very fast because this is usually huge work and huge data. So you can have interviews. So a single interview maybe 1 hour or even more than that. So transcribing that may need a lot of time. So you can use some computer programs to help you with this. But of course, computer programs in research do not replace the fact that you actually need to be very careful with the transcription. So you need to make sure that the transcription is actually accurate. This is to say that computer programs may not be 100% accurate because of issues to do with accent and other things that can be wrongly written. But if you start to look at this data, you start to gain an understanding of the data in terms of its structure. So that is the next step, which is familiarization. You start to get some kind of insights about the patterns and also things that are emerging from the qualitative research. Now, the next stage now is coding. With coding, you're basically trying to assign labels or codes to particular words or phrases that are coming out of this data that you've collected. And then this now can be used now to generate what we call themes. Themes are patterns of, of the data that you have. Like if you have people talking about, let us say, for example, there are people who are saying the same thing using different words. Okay, so that same thing that is being described across by other people, by other research participants. That means that is a theme. It can be a theme about dishonesty. Okay, and then people are using different words to describe dishonesty. It can be about quality, whether the quality is good or bad. Okay, so they will describe this using many words, but they point towards that pattern of data, good quality or bad quality, dishonest or honest, whatever theme that emerges. So there's that kind of pattern that you start to recognize in your data set. The next thing is now summarizing this data, condensing it, okay, so into forms that you can manage. Here you can use tables, diagrams to do this. So, for example, if people are painting, or if you have a theme that is emerging about maybe dishonesty as one of the themes that are emerging from your research, and then you don't necessarily need to include each and every one that is related to dishonesty from the different participants under that theme. So you start to reduce these ones and pick out the key things that you may think are very, very important that you can actually include in your report. And then now the interpretation, you're starting to make sense out of the data that you have collected. One contentious thing about qualitative data is what we call validity. Validity is a concept in research that concerns with whether a given research tool measures what it is intended to measure. So if you're seeking out to measure a particular concept, you should use the right tool to measure it. So the issues here for in the context of qualitative research is that validity is related to the trustworthiness of the research findings. Can actually people believe your research findings? Okay, can they trust your research? These are things that are very pertinent that you have to look at in making interpretation of your findings. So now you need to present your findings. They usually the discussion and interpretation of findings, or what you can say, the presenting the findings and the discussion of these findings. In qualitative research, sometimes it's actually looked at in one chapter because it is very hard to distinguish the findings from the discussion. So most people find it convenient to have this way together. So when you're now looking at how you're presenting your findings, you need to have certain things in mind that should actually come out in your discussion of those findings. One is the ability of your research findings to be transferred to other settings. This is transferability or generalization. We earlier on hinted on the fact that generalization in qualitative research is actually very hard. It's hard, but still you need to explain the potential that actually your findings can actually be transferred in other settings. You need to clearly state how you collected the data, describe how you collected the data, and why you use the methods that you actually apply. So this is very important for people to have an insight on how you arrived at certain decisions. This is very key because it will increase their ability to trust your work. That is credibility, and also whether they can actually trust your work or not. And then the conclusion should actually be consistent with the evidence that you have got from the study. So you need to make sure that you actually draw the right conclusion from the findings. You may not necessarily actually have to present all your findings in form of words, but you can still use imaginative diagrams and other semantics to actually communicate what you intend to. Including quotes or verbatims is actually very, very important because it actually helps in emphasizing the points that you're trying to put across. Research ethics is actually very important. We need, as a researcher, you need to conduct your research in a way that is actually portraying your integrity, professional ethics, and also the rightful behaviors. If you actually don't portray this, it still comes back to people questioning your research process. And also at the end of it all, they will question your findings if you don't conduct research in the right way. So there are guidelines that you actually need to follow in conducting research. It's very important that you actually follow. It's very important that you actually follow this because you don't want your reputation to be harmed in a way. Here there is a capital R, it should be small r. I mean, yes, in this line, this R comes down, reputation of researchers, disciplines and universities. There are two braces here. Okay, so it is actually very important that you follow the right ethical principles because you don't want to harm the research participants in the process of your research, and that usually you conduct the research that is your own research, individual research, or you can be a team of people that are actually conducting research, or even you could be falling into a particular profession that in which you're conducting this research, or even organizations which can be NGOs, universities, and other uh, private or even public institutions. So you have an image that you actually have to protect, whether you're carrying out this research on, as an individual, as an organization, or as a person who falls under a particular discipline, because you have a professional obligation to protect the image of a particular discipline. So that is why it is actually very key that you follow the right ethical principles. So what are these ethical principles? We have autonomy, that people have the right to make their own decisions, and they should actually be treated with dignity and respect. And with this means that you don't have to coerce them to be part of the research. You want them to make informed decisions on whether they can participate in the research or not. And then the other issue is confidentiality, which is the fact that you don't want to disclose information to other parties that are not part of the research, because certain information is privileged to you as a researcher, and you don't want other people to have unauthorized access. And therefore, you should make it very clear to the research participants on who is actually going to access the information uh, that is going to be collected from them, but also if you're to store this information, for how long will you store it and how it will actually be used or even destroyed. How long will it take for that data to continue existing? Do you have ways in which you're going to dispose of this data? This is very important. Um, Research is basically aimed at doing resulting into better life outcomes or better health outcomes, or even improving people's quality of life. So it should actually carry a benefit. That is the principle of beneficence. And you should not harm the participants. So do no harm. That is the principle of non-maleficence. And then justice, this is associated with fair distribution of resources and opportunities that come with research. And then, of course, you don't want to waste your resources on conducting research that is not scientifically sound. You need to use the right methods of conducting research such that the findings from this research can actually uh, contribute to scientific advancement. Um, so you want people to sign consent forms. These consent forms can only be signed when you have provided adequate, accurate information to the research participants, such that they can make their own voluntary decisions. And it is very important that there are people of sound minds who can make good decisions. So they should be very competent. So the information that you need to provide to the information that you need to provide to the research participant in order for them to make the informed decision includes who you are, so your identity and which organization you're working for, the nature of the study, the aim of the study, and how they will actually participate in the study and their right to withdraw from the study, and how the data will actually be used and, or stored, and that identifiers will not be used in the research uh, process. Earlier on, we mentioned that the researcher is actually a research tool himself or herself, because they bring into the research process their insights, their own insights or experiences um, about the topic that they're actually investigating. So this, in a way, actually creates bias, and it is very important that we recognize this data, this bias, or this experience or insights uh, uh, from the word go. So the researcher needs to reflect on their own experiences, background, and perspectives, and how this may actually influence the research process, whether in the design, data collection, analysis, and interpretation. This is very key because we need to have that kind of understanding and know the person who is conducting this research. How is this person actually influencing the research process? So this is a concept to do with reflexivity. So you become very explicit of your own background experiences, insights about the research topic. And let's see how it actually influences the research and perhaps what we have done to make sure that these influences don't have a clear bearing on the interpretation of the research. Sampling, you will not conduct a research on each and every one, but you instead actually have uh, a segment or a subset of the population that you actually ask questions. So the process of selecting that subset is what you call sampling. So you can use probability sampling methods or the non-probability sampling methods. When we talk about probability sampling methods, we mean that the chances that members of the community of a particular population actually have an equal chance of participating in the study. That means that you are basically picking members randomly from a population randomly. This is very important, especially in quantitative research methods. So therefore, non-probability sampling methods are very common in qualitative research. Um, and that is perhaps one of the reasons as to why we do not have uh, uh, good property of generalization in qualitative studies, because we don't choose representative. The samples are not usually representative of the whole population, so it is very difficult to make conclusions based on the samples that we have. So we cannot infer our conclusions on the genome or the whole population. So in qualitative research, we use the following methods of sampling: purposive sampling, theoretical sampling, snowball, and convenience sampling. Purposive sampling is one where you actually make a decision on who you need to include in the research study. These could be people who have uh, good information about the research topic. There are people in the know, or there are people who have actually experienced the phenomena that you're actually interested in. So they become what you call good informants. Um, theoretical saturation. Theoretical saturation is a concept that actually is related to sampling because, yes, you want to continue collecting data. You want to continue collecting data uh, uh, from people, but you actually do not have the predetermined number of participants that you want to collect data from. So therefore, you you collect the data until a point in which you do not collect no new information. At that point is what we call saturation. This is very important for you to note. This line on saturation should move. Bef- uh, it should be before sampling. Okay, it should be before sampling. So quarter sampling is one which is actually concerned with having a decision on who is going to participate in the research because of maybe their age, their address, and their occupation. So, for example, if you're conducting a research in the hospital, you may need to get the views of the doctors, the nurses, clinic officers, and the rest. So you can say 4 doctors, 4 nurses, and then maybe 4 clinic officers. This is quota. So you're basing the decision on who you're going to interview based on their profession, so that you can have a clear picture of the problem that you're investigating. This one should be complete, complete sentence. Need to move it. Theoretical sampling, you are basically collecting data from individuals because of the fact that there are prior studies that have been done on these individuals. Okay, so it involves selecting respondents based on findings that of a research study that was already done. Then we move to snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is when you know there are few individuals who have experienced uh, a phenomena that you are actually interested in, and now you need to identify 1 or 2 of them, and then those 2 will actually lead you to other people who have the same experience. So this is actually very important in case you actually have difficulty talking to the research participants. So they can enable you to connect to other research participants, and then they can agree to the interview. Convenience sampling is when now you actually get those who are available to you, place and time. Okay, those who are really available to you are the ones that you actually interview. The difficulty is that this may not be representative of the general population. We have a concept of gatekeeper. This is to refer to the fact that if you want to, for example, have an interview with students, then the head teacher becomes a gatekeeper because he becomes the key person who will give you access to the research participants or even to the research area. Keep that out. One of the weaknesses of qualitative research, as we mentioned earlier, was that it is very hard to make generalizations, so we have issues to do with validity. So one of the ways of handling such issues is to use triangulation. This is a principle in which you actually use more than one method to reach a particular conclusion. So you may, for example, combine findings or use different methods to get findings on the related problem that you're actually investigating. Okay, so that means you're trying to get information from multiple sources. So the more you get information from multiple sources, then it becomes very easy for you to actually make good conclusions. So instead of relying on the one source to make a conclusion, you make sure that you have other sources that you can use uh, to reach a particular conclusion. That is what we call triangulation. You need to clearly describe the research process because uh, this is when now you can gain trust of the readers of your research and also using quotes and explaining the whole process of the research that you actually conducted. It is very important that you actually also use quotes, but also get consent on how on, from people about using quotes. Thank you. So we have reached the end of this presentation. It has been long, but I hope you have gained insights on the importance of qualitative research in the context of public health or even health in general. We basically want to get that kind of understanding about people's experiences such that we can be able to adjust our programs in a way that is actually very effective, efficient, and that does not result into waste of the resources. Thank you very much.